Giri Govardhana ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Shri Mayapur Dhama ki jai, Shri Munamaya ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki jai, Brihat Madanga Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai, Transcendental Prasadam Distribution ki jai, Go Premanandi, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Kunjabihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Gaura Premanandi, Hari Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All together. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nashtapraeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Om Agyana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militanjena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai. So welcome everyone to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Jai. Welcome, Sarah. So we're starting a new chapter today. This chapter is chapter 18 of the 5th canto, entitled The Prayers Offered to the Lord by the Residents of Jambu Dweep. So we've been hearing all about the geography of Jambu Dweep within this material universe, and how it's divided up into 9 different varshas, 9 different sections. And in this chapter, we're going to see that on each one of those varshas, there are inhabitants, and there's also an incarnation of the Lord. And the inhabitants are worshiping the Lord. So it's interesting that we're seeing an example of how the Supreme Lord is worshipped all over the universe. And he's offered different prayers by different people in different locations according to their hearts. So we'll see that. And we're going to read texts 1 to 6, and then we'll come back and focus on text 4. So, someone like to read text 1? Is there a mic? I'll read the first. I'll read it then. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, Bhadrashvava, the son of Dharmaraj, rules the tract of land known as Bhadrashva Varsha. Just as Lord Shiva worshipped Sankarshan in Ilavrita Varsha, Bhadrashvava, accompanied by his intimate servants and all the residents of the land, worships the plenary expansion of Vasudev known as Hayashirsha. Lord Hayashirsha is very dear to the devotees, and he is the director of all religious principles. Fixed in the topmost trance, Bhadrashvava and his associates offer their respectful obeisances to the Lord and chant the following prayers with careful pronunciation. So today we're going to hear about what happens in the tract of land called Bhadrashva Varsha. And it's like right in my okay. So on Bhadrashvava, the person who is the main person voicing the prayers on behalf of all of the residents of Bhadrashva Varsha is Bhadrashvava, apparently who that Varsha is named after. And he's the son of Dharmaraj, who is the Lord of Religion. So let us see what he's going to say. Text 2.
The ruler Bhadrashvava and his intimate associates utter the following prayer. We offer our respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the reservoir of all religious principles, who cleanses the heart of the conditioned soul in this material world. Again and again we offer our respectful obeisances unto him.
Alas, how wonderful is that the foolish materialist does not heed the great danger of impending death. He knows that death will surely come, yet is nevertheless callous and neglectful. If his father dies, he wants to enjoy his father's property, and if his son dies, he wants to enjoy his son's possessions as well. In either case, he heedlessly tries to enjoy material happiness with the acquired money.
Text 4. O unborn one, learned Vedic scholars who are advanced in spiritual knowledge certainly know that this material world is perishable, as do other logicians and philosophers. In trance, they realize the factual position of this world, and they preach the truth as well. Yet, even they are sometimes bewildered by your illusory energy. This is your own wonderful pastime. Therefore, I can understand that your illusory energy is very wonderful, and I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
Text 5. O Lord, although you are completely detached from the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of this material world, and are not directly affected by these activities, they are all attributed to you. We do not wonder at this, for your inconceivable energies perfectly qualify you to be the cause of all causes. You are the active principle in everything, although you are separate from everything. Thus we can realize that everything is happening because of your inconceivable energy.
Last one.
At the end of the millennium, ignorance personified assumed the form of a demon, stole all the Vedas, and took them down to the planet of Rasatala. The Supreme Lord, however, in his form of Hayagriva, retrieved the Vedas and returned them to Lord Brahma when he begged for them. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, whose determination never fails.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going back to text 4 now, and we'll do the Sanskrit. So please repeat after me. Vadanti Vishvam Kavayasmanav. Sorry. I'll do it again. Vadanti Vishvam Kavayasmanasvaram. Pashyanti cha yamatvido vipashchita. Tatapi muhyanti tavajamayaya. Suvismitam krityamajam natosmitam. Vadanti Vishvam Kavayasmanashvaram. Pashyanti chadyatma vido vipashchita. Tatapi muhyanti tavajamayaya. Suvismitam krityamajam natosmitam. Please chant. Vadanti Vishvam Kavayasmanashvaram. Chadyatma vido vipashchita. Titavajamayaya. Suvismitam krityamajam natosmitam. Vadanti Vishvam Kavayasmanashvaram. Pashyanti chadyatma vido vipashchita. Tatapi muhyanti tavajamayaya. Suvismitam krityamajam natosmitam. Vadanti Vishvam Kavayasmanashvaram. Pashyanti chadyatma vido vipashchita. Tatapi muhyanti tavajamayaya. Suvismitam krityamajam natosmitam. Let's do the word for word all together. Vadanti, they say authoritatively. Vishvam, the entire material creation. Kavaya, great learned sages. Sma, certainly. Nashvaram, perishable. Pashyanti, they see in trance. Cha also. Adhyatma vida, those who Vipashita, very learned scholars. Tata api, still. Muyanti, become illusioned. Tava, your. Aja, O unborn one. Mayaya, by the illusory energy. Suvismitam, most wonderful. Krityam, activity. Ajam, unto the supreme unborn one. Nata asmi, I offer my obeisances. Tam, unto him. Translation: O unborn one, learned Vedic scholars who are advanced in spiritual knowledge certainly know that this material world is perishable, as do other logicians and philosophers. In trance, they realize the factual position of this world, and they preach the truth as well. Yet even they are sometimes bewildered by your illusory energy. This is your own wonderful pastime. Therefore, I can understand that your illusory energy is very wonderful, and I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So, Srila Prabhupada's purport. Not only does the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead act on the conditioned soul within the material world, but sometimes it also acts on the most advanced learned scholars, who actually know the constitutional position of this material world through realization. As soon as someone thinks, I am this material body, aham mameti, and everything in relationship with this material body is mine, he is in illusion, moha. This illusion caused by the material energy acts especially on the conditioned souls, but it sometimes also acts on liberated souls as well. A liberated soul is a person who has sufficient knowledge of this material world and is therefore unattached to the bodily conception of life. But because of association with the modes of material nature for a very long time, even liberated souls sometimes become captivated by the illusory energy due to inattentiveness in the transcendental position. Therefore, Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 7:14, Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Only those who surrender unto me can overcome the influence of the material energy. Therefore, no one should think of himself as a liberated person immune to the influence of Maya. Everyone should very cautiously execute the devotional service by rigidly following regulative principles. Thus you will remain fixed at the lotus feet of the Lord. Otherwise, a little inattention will create havoc. We have already seen an example of this in the case of Maharaj Bharat. Maharaj Bharat was undoubtedly a great devotee, but because he turned his attention slightly towards a small deer, he had to suffer 2 more births, one as a deer and another as the Brahmin Jad Bharat. Afterwards, he was liberated and went back home, back to Godhead. The Lord is always prepared to excuse his devotee, but if a devotee takes advantage of the Lord's leniency and purposefully commits mistakes again and again, the Lord will certainly punish him by letting him fall down into the clutches of the illusory energy. In other words, theoretical knowledge acquired by studying the Vedas is insufficient to protect one from the clutches of Maya. One must strongly adhere to the lotus feet of the Lord in devotional service. Then one's position is secure. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, before we get into this very important purport, I just want to speak a little bit about the prayers here. So throughout the Bhagavatam, we see many different great personalities offering prayers to the Lord. And from the way that they offer prayers, we can learn how to pray. And one thing that we observe, if you kind of isolate all the prayers of the Bhagavatam and really study like the format or the structure of those prayers, then you'll see a certain pattern. And that is that generally, even though they may want to request something, they don't just go right in there and, dear God, please give me this. But they start with glorification of the Lord. So that's what's happening here. We see this, that the first thing that they say is, we offer our respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, who is the reservoir of all religious principles, who cleanses the heart of the conditioned souls. So they're glorifying him as the supreme, as the all-powerful, as the only person who can really help anybody, as the person who purifies us, as the person who has all good qualities, as the emblem of religious principles. And then in this particular set of prayers, because each set of prayers here is different, because it's individuals, it's a personal relationship. So it's not just like, this is the prayer, everybody offer this prayer, and it can become mechanical. But this is Vajrashava praying from his own heart and expressing his own appreciation and gratitude to the Lord. And what he's particularly appreciating here is the Lord's illusory energy and how wonderful it is and how wonderfully it acts on conditioned souls in this world and even on liberated souls. So this is his personal appreciation at this moment. And then he goes on to glorify the Lord more by talking about how a particular episode that happened at the end of the millennium is that a demon came along and stole all the Vedas, and then the Lord incarnated as Hayagriva and saved the Vedas. So, and then he again ends by offering his respectful obeisances to the Lord, whose determination never fails. So it's interesting that in this particular set of prayers, he's not actually praying for anything. He's not asking the Lord for anything. He's just simply glorifying the Lord. So it's kind of like for those of us who, I think anywhere in the world actually, but the way I was trained to pray, growing up in Christianity, was that you ask, dear God, give me this, give me that, bless this person, give me my daily bread. And, it's how you approach the Lord when you need something or when you're in trouble, you need to be saved from some situation that's difficult. And one thing that I realized is that if you only pray to God when you're in trouble or when you're in need, then God will keep you in trouble and in need because he wants you to turn to him. Like he wants us to pray to him. He wants us to remember him. So if we only remember God when we're in distress, then we're going to have to be in distress a lot so that we can make spiritual advancement, because otherwise we're going to forget about God and just, try to enjoy life. But if you remember God when you're happy and when things are going well, and you turn to God and express your gratitude. Thank you so much for, this blessing in my life, that blessing in my life, for this situation, for this person, for this instruction, for this wisdom, for this process, and every day expressing our gratitude to the Lord like that, then you'll find that many good things keep coming. because in one sense, Krishna's a little neutral to the external circumstances, but what he's attentive to is our Krishna consciousness. He's attentive to our spiritual advancement and the situations that enhance or nurture or foster our spiritual advancement and our taking shelter of him. So you can try that as a little homework. Try to every day turn to the Lord with gratitude. Or even if it's not something, we can totally take ourselves out of the situation. Like here, Bhadrashava, he's not asking for anything pertaining to him. He's not expressing gratitude at anything pertaining to him. He's just glorifying the Lord. Like, Krishna, I'm just praying to you because I want to tell you how wonderful you are. I want to tell you how much I appreciate your quality or your pastime, how you lifted Govardhan Hill to save the Brajabasis, or how you supplied the unlimited sari for Draupadi when she was in trouble, or, just any pastime of the Lord. Just think about and express your appreciation for his wonderful qualities and the way that he always shows up for his devotees, the way his determination never fails, right? And Bhadrashava gives this example. And like that. And that way we can be very Krishna conscious all the time. And that's also kirtan, right? That's also part of Kirtaniya Sadahari, is that we're singing the glories of the Lord, offering prayers to glorify the Lord, his wonderful qualities. So what Bhadrashava is focusing on is the Lord's wonderful illusory energy and how it bewilders everyone, including liberated souls. So this is very interesting. In text 3, in the purport, text 3 is all about how the illusory energy bewilders materialists, right? How wonderful it is that the foolish materialists do not heed the great danger of impending death. So that was one of the most wonderful things in this world that Maharaj Yudhisthira mentioned, is that when he was asked, what's the most amazing thing in this world? He said the most amazing thing is that everybody's seeing that all around them people are dying. Animals are dying, insects are dying, birds are dying. All living beings are just dying. Every day, millions and millions of living entities are dying. But he thinks, or she thinks, that I'll live forever. This death is not going to come to me. Or they might in the back of their mind think that, okay, one day I'll die, but, that's coming much, much later. I don't need to think about it. I don't need to prepare for that. It's like something that's out of sight, out of mind. And so he said that's a very wonderful thing, because if we are actually conscious of the fact that, I could die any moment, anything could happen at any moment, walking across the street, or just, having a heart attack, or, things happen, even to young people. So, what's going to happen? I'm an eternal soul. Where am I going after I leave this body? What's going to happen to me? How do I prepare for that? How do I, So when we read the Vedic scriptures, there's a lot of talk about how to prepare oneself for the next life, how to get an elevated birth, or how to get out of the cycle of repeated birth and death, so that we can regain our spiritual position in the spiritual world. So those are all things that we need to think about very carefully, very deeply, and make that a major purpose of our life, if not the purpose of our life. Because after all, we're souls, and everything that we gain materially is going to be left behind, right? All the money that we earned, all the titles that we were awarded with, all of our material achievements are just going to be lost to us and forgotten by everyone else too after a short time. So if we make those the only purpose of our life, material gain, then we're going to end up being frustrated and disappointed at the end of life. But if we cultivate spiritual life from the very, very beginning, then everything that we accrue, everything that we achieve spiritually is for our eternal benefit. It's the only things that we can take with us. So that's a wise approach to life, is to try to gain spiritual credits, to try to make spiritual advancement, which means advancing closer and closer to Krishna, closer and closer in our relationship with God. And that's what prayer is for. Prayer is to connect with God. It's a time when we sit down with God and talk to Him. Just like if you want to develop a relationship with someone, you need to spend time with them. You need to spend quality time with them, and listen to them and speak to them, and really connect in a very deep way. So this is what we're seeing here, and this is instructive for us. So it says here in the purport to text 3, Srila Prabhupada writes, because he's talking about materialistic people being bewildered and engaging all kinds of sinful activities, but that even, he's talking about how even their sinful activities are sanctioned by the Lord, because ultimately Krishna is controlling everything. There's nothing that's happening that's not either the will of the Lord, or sanctioned by the Lord, or like permitted by the Lord. So sometimes parents, they may not want their child to do something. They would prefer that the child would do something else. But when they see that the child is persistent on doing something, they'll be like, all right, fine, get it out of your system, kind of thing. So that's Krishna's approach to materialists. So this question is raised in the purport. Prabhupada says, Shri Radhikala Chandji ki jai. Srila Prabhupada says, why does the Supreme Personality of Godhead permit sinful activities? And then he answers, the Supreme Lord does not want any living being to act sinfully, and he begs him through his good conscience to refrain from sin. So this is a way that actually Krishna is begging us, don't do that sinful activity, don't do that, nefarious act. And how is he begging us? The Prabhupada says, through our good conscience, right? So we all have this conscience. We have conscience means that little voice in your heart and mind that's telling you, I don't think this is a good thing to do. Like, this is not going to have good consequences. So, somebody who's, sober and attentive and thoughtful and introspective is tuned into their good conscience. And so that conscience is actually the voice of the super soul, because Paramatma is in our heart, and from within the heart, he's speaking to us, and he's trying to push us to always do the right thing, to do things that are actually going to benefit us. So whenever you hear that voice, that gut feeling that I don't feel comfortable with this, right? I don't think this is a good idea, then we need to listen to it, because it's actually the voice of the Lord from within the heart saying, don't do it. Don't go there. It's not going to be good for you. So Prabhupada's saying he begs us through our good conscience to refrain from sinful acts. But when someone insists upon acting sinfully, when we become oblivious to that inner voice of wisdom, then he says, then the Supreme Lord gives that person the sanction to act at their own risk. He's like, okay, if you really want to do it, then do so at your own risk. But I'm not going to protect you from the results. There are going to be consequences that you're going to have to suffer alone. So the point here is that, as Prabhupada writes, no one can do anything without the sanction of the Lord. But he is so kind that when the conditioned soul persists in doing something, the Lord permits the individual to act at his own risk. So this is a characteristic of the Lord, that he gives us our free will. He doesn't, intervene. And although he's a supreme controller, he doesn't micromanage our lives. He gives us a free will. He gives us some autonomy to make our own decisions. And then he rewards good choices and he punishes bad choices. And that way we learn from our mistakes and we grow. So it's a very natural system. And Brajashrava he's just amazed that anyone would go ahead and do sinful activities. So how is it, that a soul who's eternal and full of knowledge and full of bliss would make such bad choices? He's saying that's because of the illusory energy. That they're bewildered. Because when we want to rebel against the Lord and do our own thing in this world, to forget about the Lord and just try to enjoy our bodies and senses with all the things of this world, then a soul who's actually in knowledge, who's actually fully conscious of our real identity, cannot do so. Like sometimes, a person who's totally drunk, like really just intoxicated out of their mind, they'll do something that if they were sober, they never would have done, right? Maybe some of you have that experience that you do in your previous days, that you got totally intoxicated and you did something and you may not even been aware that you did it, and afterwards somebody told you did it and you're like, oh my God, that was so stupid. How could I ever have done something so destructive or harmful or just goofy, embarrassing. I would have never done it, if I was had my wits about me. So in the same way, a soul would never try to enjoy sense gratification in this material world. A soul would never become attached to material objects. If we were in our right mind, if we were sober and in touch with who we are and what our real self-interest is. So then Krishna has to basically intoxicate us. He has to put us in an intoxicated position by the influence of illusory energy to make us forget who we are, make us forget what we're supposed to be doing, make us forget our relationship with him, so that we can just basically mess up our lives in material existence by thinking I'm this body and the purpose of life is to enjoy my senses through, food and money and sex and power and, the latest iPhone or whatever, it is that we're attached to, thinking those things are going to make us happy. But when we come to clear consciousness, then we realize actually these things are not making me happy at all. The more material things I get, the more frustrated I get, and the more I identify with this body, the more miserable I become, and I really need to seek an alternative, to this way of life. And then we come to spiritual life, and we start, reading the scriptures, hearing from advanced devotees, and figuring out, oh yeah, that's why I was frustrated, because I was trying to act like a body, and I'm not this body. I'm actually a soul. I need to try to act like a soul. So then what does a soul do? A soul serves the Lord. And then the more we engage in devotional service of the Lord, then the more we become happy, and the more the reality of our eternal identity becomes revealed, and we become more firmly situated in that. So, but then he's going on in text 4 to say that even somebody who's spiritually realized, even someone who's on a spiritual path, sometimes can become bewildered, sometimes become influenced by this illusory energy and fall into illusion. And he says, why is that? He says that because for so long we've been in this material world, and so we have bad habits. And so as soon as we're a little inattentive in our, spiritual practices, then we may fall back into those bad habits. So we have to be very, very vigilant very attentive to the ways that the material world influences us and the ways that this illusory energy may creep in. Like Srila Prabhupada says that it's in like a needle and out like a plow. In other words, like sometimes a needle, like, if you go to get a shot, the needle is so thin that sometimes you don't even feel it. I remember when I got my COVID shot, I was like, did you even do it? I felt nothing. I really had serious doubts whether she actually did it. But yeah, so sometimes you don't even feel the influence of the illusory energy coming in, but it's like in like a needle, and then plow is like a big thing that tears up the earth. So when you try to take it out, it like just tears up your life. So we need to be very, very careful to feel that needle going in so that we can be like, no, before it becomes too big. Because it starts off small and then, like, oh, just a little something, it's okay. I've been practicing Krishna consciousness for so long. Just a little bit of material enjoyment won't hurt me. I'm pretty well situated, I think. It's not going to throw me off. But that little thing may not. But then the trouble is that the little thing leads to another little thing and 3 more little things and then a medium-sized thing and then a few medium-sized things and eventually a big thing. And before you know it, it's like you're in big Maya. You're really heavily under the influence of illusion, and you start acting like a body again and being miserable. And being even more miserable because you know that you're not the body, but you're stuck in the bodily concept of life. So we have to be very, very careful. That's what Vajrashrava is praying to the Lord and also simultaneously instructing us through his prayers that we need to be careful of this wonderful illusory energy of mind, of the Lord. I'm saying mind because I'm looking at the verse here. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that, this illusory energy is very, very difficult to overcome. It says, Daivihesha gunamayi, mama maya daratyaya, mam eva ye prapadyante, mayam etam tarantite. This divine energy of mine, this is Bhagavad Gita 7:14. You can pull it up. Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Very, very important verse. And Bhagavad Gita 7:14. So it's mentioned in the purport of this verse from Bhagavad Gita that Prabhupada raises the question that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains earlier in the 7th chapter that the material energy is his inferior energy. He says that, how's it start? Bhumir apo nalo vayu, kammano buddhir eva cha, ahankaram iti yame, bina prakriti ashtada. He says that these 8 things, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, these comprise my separated material energy, which is the inferior energy. And then the next verse he says, aparayami tastvanyam prakritim vidhime param jiva bhuta mahabaho yayedam daryate jagat. That besides these, so mighty armed Arjuna, there's another superior energy of mind which comprises the living entities, which are exploiting the resources of the material inferior nature. So he's saying the material world and all the things in the material world, material energy, that's inferior energy of Krishna. Krishna's inferior energy. And we, the living entities, all, any living being, humans, animals, plants, are spiritual. And that spiritual energy is superior to the material energy. So then he raises the question that how can the superior energy come under the influence of the inferior energy? Like if we're actually superior to the illusory energy, why can't we just throw it off? Why can't we just like, all right, I'm superior to you. I'm telling you to just leave me alone. Like, just get out of my life and don't bother me. Let me, don't bring me down, like the old song from the 70s. No. Anyways, don't pull me down from my spiritual position. I don't want to be covered by ignorance. So why is it that even though we may be on a spiritual path and may not want to be an illusion, we nonetheless sometimes become under the influence of illusion? And Srila Prabhupada explains the reason why that happens is because even though the illusory energy is inferior, but still it's Krishna's energy and it's under Krishna's control. So if Krishna decides to put us under the control of his illusory energy, then that's it. Like we can't go against the will of Krishna in that sense. So, and Krishna responds to our desire. So when we desire to be in ignorance, then Krishna's like, all right, then, shoom, there you go. The illusory energy is going to defeat you. And there's nothing that we can do about it. But there's one thing that we can do about it, and that is that we can call out to Krishna. Like, please, Krishna, you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This illusory energy is totally under your control. I can't free myself from it, but you can free me. So I just surrender to you as your servant and ask you to free me from this ignorance, free me from this illusion, so that I can see the reality. I can see things as they are, and I can be successful on my spiritual path. And when we do that, then Krishna says, Mayam etam mam eva ye prapadyante. When they surrender to me, then they can easily cross beyond this illusory energy and this material existence and attain a real spiritual life. So, you want to learn a little song? I have a song for this verse that's sweet and will help us remember this very important verse. So, I think you know it, right? It goes like this. I'll sing it. I'll sing it once, and then maybe we can sing it together if you catch on quick. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Everybody, let's try it. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Yay, beautiful. Thank you. So, so this is something to remember, that if we just surrender to Krishna, we can very easily cross beyond this illusory energy, which affects even liberated souls. And that's what Prabhupada is saying, that he says that one has to strongly adhere to the lotus feet of the Lord in devotional service. So this is the benefit of the process of bhakti. And this is what one of the main things that makes bhakti the topmost yoga system, or the best spiritual process, is because it's the easiest and it's the most effective. Because the bhakti yogi, the bhakta, the devotee, recognizes that I can't do this alone. I'm not going to be spiritually successful on my own strength, but I actually need Krishna's help. And so we pray to Krishna. This illusory energy is your energy. It's under your full control, and you can free me from the influence of it. Just like sometimes a good example is like, say you're going to the house of an old friend. You haven't been to that friend's house for a long time, and so you're walking up the path to the front door, and then you realize that there's a dog, and the dog senses you approaching the door, and then the dog starts going wild and barking its head off and looking like it's going to attack you and tear you apart, and you're like, oh no, I'm in big danger here now. And then you start calling out your friend's name, because you're thinking, this dog is not even going to let me get close enough to the front door to knock. So you just start yelling, hey, friend, please come quick. Your dog, is going to rip me apart. And then the friend hears his name, and then he opens the door, and he's like, hey there, Rufus, come on. And then as soon as he hears the master's voice, then the dog sits down quietly, and he's wagging his tail, and then you can go and approach your friend. So it's like that. We're trying to approach Krishna, and as we approach Krishna, sometimes the illusory energy can disturb us, can threaten to pull us away, can obstruct us from achieving that goal. But if we just call out to Krishna, we call out Krishna's name, then he's going to hear us, and he's going to see that, oh, this person is trying to approach me, but they're in trouble because my dog, my illusory energy is giving them trouble. So he's going to be like, all right, illusory energy, just back off. Leave them alone. This is my friend trying to come to me to serve me. So how do we call out to Krishna in these circumstances? By the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So just remember that whenever you're in trouble, whenever there's any doubts, whenever you're in difficulty, just be like, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then Maya will leave us alone. Because like it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a nice verse that says, Krishna Surya Sama Maya Haya Andakara Yahan Krishna Tahan Nahi Maya Adhikara. That Krishna is like the sun and Maya is like the darkness. And so wherever there is Krishna, there can be no illusion. So just like the night is dark, but as soon as the sun rises, it's all gone. So as soon as we bring Krishna into our consciousness, by chanting his names, by seeing the deity, by reading the books about Krishna or spoken by Krishna like Bhagavad Gita, then immediately the illusion just dissipates, and we're reminded that, okay, yes, I'm a soul. I'm an eternal servant of Krishna. I know what I need to do. I need to follow the principles given to me by Krishna in these books of wisdom through his representatives, the spiritual master, and devotees who are following those principles, and then I'm going to be safe. So, yes, Premamrita? It's on.
Hello. Sometimes thank you for a nice class. I hear this though, that if you call out to Krishna, it'll just get rid of his illusory energy, and when we call out to Krishna, and you mentioned if our desire, if we have ulterior desire still, we can be calling out to Krishna and it might not. But I don't know, sometimes I feel like I really am just crying out to Krishna, please, and I'm really just giving him all that I've got in my heart. And in that moment, I'm crying out like that, and then the next moment it goes back to being covered over by illusion. Why doesn't he just take that, that moment and let that be the moment that he grabs me and takes me home, or whatever, takes my heart back to him? Why does he? Yeah. Why do I have to again go back into a state of wanting other things? Because really in those moments I feel like I've just relinquished all other desires, but then they come back.
Yeah, because sometimes we think that we're free from desires, but the desires are still there. And it's kind of like I compare it to kind of like a geyser or something that just keeps spewing out water. And no matter how much water comes out, there's still more water to come out. So our material desires, they come up, and we observe them, and we may be like, just let this go. I just don't want to have this material desire. And it goes, but then the next moment, it comes again. Our material desires, I've heard it said that our material desires have many lives. We think they're dead. We think they're done with, but they come back. They just keep rearing their ugly heads again. So sometimes these desires and attachments that we have are a lot more deep than we think they are. And so, we'll pray and we'll think, I'm free from this. All right, I'm ready to go. Krishna, just take me back to Godhead. But he's like, actually, there's a little more work to be done. Yeah.
But our deepest desire as souls is to serve Krishna. And so when we access that deepest desire, why isn't that he's greater than our mundane desires? Why can't he just get rid of them? And go for that deepest desire that he knows that we have.
Yeah. Because it's a process, it's a learning curve. We're on a learning curve. So it's just Okay, so I was a teacher, and you give the students an exam, right? And, obviously I wrote the exam. I know the questions. I know the answers. And I want my students to pass the exam. So, and also it's in my self-interest for the students to pass the exam, because if all of my students ace the exam, then I look like a good teacher, right? That I did a good job teaching. So why don't I just give them the paper and just sit there and tell them all the answers? Like, why wouldn't a teacher do that? What's that? They're not going to learn anything. Yeah, so they have to actually do the work. They have to struggle. And through the struggle, they learn. So Krishna's not just going to take it away. He's going to make us work through it. But he's going to give us everything that we need. So a good teacher doesn't just say, all right, this is the syllabus. This is what you have to learn by the end of the semester, and there's going to be a test. Bye. It's up to you. No, the teacher is showing up every day, teaching them, explaining everything, answering questions, giving them resources like textbooks and educational videos, and taking them on field trips and getting them to do learning activities like experiences, so they can really it really gets indelibly etched into their memories, and then gives the test. And then it's like, all right, now it's up to you. Now you need to apply everything that I've taught you. So in Bhakti, we have to work through it, and we have to take the exam ourselves. But Krishna gives us. He gives us spiritual masters. He gives us association of devotees. He gives us the Shastras. He gives us, he comes as the deity. He comes as his holy name. He's giving us like every support, every possible means of support to pass the exam. And it's an open book test, right? He's going to do everything except give you the answers or do the test for you, So I'll take one more question, then I have to go over to TKG Academy.
We hear that there's only one God, but that position can't be held by anybody else. You mentioned that Hayagriva was the Lord, and I've also seen that King Prithu is called the personality of Godhead. Rishabhadev's called God. I've even seen the Bhagavatam where Lord Shiva was called Bhagavan. So, if God can only be one person, how is it that there's so many other persons that are called God?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. So, God is one. The original supreme person is Krishna. And then the scriptures describe, Srimad Bhagavatam describes this very clearly, how Krishna expands himself into many incarnations. He expands himself into many forms of God. So, sometimes it looks like we're polytheistic, because there's many different forms of God. There's Krishna, there's Balaram, there's Lord Ramachandra, there's Lord Nrsingadev. So it looks like we're polytheistic, but actually we're monotheistic. But we accept that there's one God, but he can take and does take many forms for his own purposes. He expands himself to perform different functions within the material and spiritual worlds. And so a correct way to term, our conception of God is polymorphic monotheism, which means we believe in one God, but that one God can take many forms. So when he wants to come to protect Prahlad, then he manifests as Lord Nrsingadev. When he wants to save the earth that's been submerged into the causal ocean, then he takes the form of Varahadev, like that. And that and he doesn't just take that form and then manifest it temporarily and then it's done. But every form of the Lord is eternal and has its own pastimes. So it's very, very wonderful. This is another wonderful, inconceivable fact about Krishna, is that he expands himself into so many forms, actually unlimited forms for unlimited purposes, and that all of these forms are transcendental and eternal. And he can be worshipped he receives worship through any of these forms, according to the taste of the worshiper. So we may be attracted to one form more than another, but then there are not that all forms, all of these forms are equal, right? Some are more empowered, some are less empowered, and some are empowered for specific purposes, but not other purposes. So, for example, there's one type of incarnation, like you mentioned, Prithu Maharaj. So he's a Shakti Avesh avatar, which means that he's an empowered soul who's empowered by the Lord to perform a particular purpose. But he doesn't have all the powers of Krishna. He doesn't have all the powers of God, but he's empowered with specific powers to do specific functions in the service of the Lord. So all the other incarnations of the Lord, they consider themselves, and we can also consider them as such, that they are servants of the original form of the Lord, Krishna. So even Lord Balaram considers himself a servant of Krishna, like that. That ultimately everyone is a servant of Krishna, and there are forms of Krishna that consider themselves servants of Krishna. What to speak of us, little tiny souls, nowhere near God, but we're very much servants of Krishna. Yeah, thank you. All right, I have to wrap it up here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo.
भरौ भुवि भुव तारकौ वन्दे रूप सनातन रघुजुगौ श्रीजीव गोपालकौ वन्दे रूप सनातन रघुजुगौ श्रीजीव गोपालकौ कृष्ण कीर्तन गान कृष्ण कीर्तन गान नर्तन परम प्रेम वीर वीर जन प्रिय प्रिय करो श्री चैतन्य कृपा भरौ तन्न कृपा भरौ भुवि भुव मारव अंतरकौ वन्दे रूप सनातन रघुजुगौ श्रीजीव गोपालकौ चारणै कल्पना सद्धर्म संस्थापक लोकानां हितकारिणं त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरण करो विचारणै कल्पना सद्धर्म संस्थापक लोकानां हितकारिणं त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरण धर्म संस्थापक लोकानां हितकारिणं त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरणं श्री चैतन्य कृपा बरौ लोकानां हितकारिणां त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरणं आत्मविचारणैकनिपुणं तद्धर्म संस्थापक लोकानां हितकारिणं त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरणाकरं